The modern economy relies on a continuous exchange of goods and services. Without a regulatory structure, these transactions carry risks of fraud or unfulfilled obligations. To mitigate these risks, we use business law, also known as mercantile or trade law. It provides the rules for business processes, specifically designed to protect the public from mischievous activities. This legal framework is divided into segments tailored to specific industrial actions and commercial needs. The scope of business law in India includes specialized legislation like the Sale of Goods Act of 1930, which governs the transfer of physical items. The framework continues expanding to include the Indian Partnership Act of 1932 and the Consumer Protection Act of 2019. These diverse laws regulate different sectors, yet all depend on a single foundational legal pillar. That pillar is the Indian Contract Act of 1872. It is applicable across all states in India and determines which promises are legally binding. The Act is central to business administration, appearing as a primary subject in comprehensive preparation materials for students and legal professionals alike. Section 2 of the Act organizes basic legal definitions into a cascading sequence of dependencies. We can view this as a contract equation, where a binding contract is the cumulative sum of several variables, beginning with a proposal. By deriving this equation, we can see exactly how the law transforms a statement of willingness into a binding business obligation. Every business interaction starts with an initiation. Section 2A defines this as a proposal. This occurs when one person signifies their willingness to do something to obtain the approval of another. Under Section 2C, the person making this proposal is the promisor or offerer, and the person receiving it is the promisee. On our contract equation interface, we place our first variable, the Section 2A proposal. Section 2B describes the transition that happens when the promisee signifies their agreement to the offer. When that acceptance is combined with the proposal, the Act states it forms a promise. However, a promise requires a mechanism of exchange before it carries legal weight in business. That mechanism is consideration, the mutual exchange of value between both parties. Section 2D defines this as the process where two parties decide to have something in return. It is quite simply the exchange of something with mutual acceptance. For example, Party A might offer a mobile phone to Party B. In return, Party B provides money equal to the phone's value. That payment is the Section 2D consideration. Without this two-way flow, the interaction lacks the exchange process required to be valid. Consideration provides the tangible evidence that both parties are participating in a mutual transaction. When we pair a promise with this consideration, the transaction reaches its next stage. Section 2E defines this as an agreement, a set of promises which has consideration between two parties. This often includes a Section 2F reciprocal promise, where a counterpromise made by the acceptor is agreed to by the original offerer. In our equation, the promise is now combined with Section 2D consideration to form a Section 2E agreement. Even at the agreement stage, the arrangement is still not a binding contract. Under Section 10, the agreement must be legal and should be documented in written form to move forward. Section 2H provides the final formula. An agreement that is enforceable by law equals a contract. We can contrast this with Section 2G, which defines the failure of this threshold. Any agreement made against the law fails the test of enforceability. It is a void agreement, meaning it is legally invalid. Enforceability is the element that allows the state to intervene if the terms of the contract are breached. A contract's validity depends entirely on its continued stability. If underlying conditions change, these rigid legal structures can suddenly fracture. Section 2I defines a voidable contract. Here, the contract is legal in its terms, but one party did not provide free consent. This contract remains in force until the party who lacked consent chooses to void it. A void contract under Section 2J is different. It describes a contract that was once valid but has ceased to be enforceable. This can be triggered by supervening impossibility, such as when a party becomes mentally disabled after signing, making the performance of the contract impossible. It can also be triggered by subsequent illegality, where a change in state policy makes performance of the contract illegal after it was already signed. These failure states demonstrate that a contract is a living arrangement, sensitive to changes in both the parties involved and the law itself. We have traced the progression from an initial proposal to mutual acceptance, forming a promise that is backed by consideration to create an agreement. When that agreement crosses the threshold of legal enforceability, it results in a binding contract. Business law in India requires this exact sequence to ensure that transactions are transparent and documented. By establishing uniform laws for all entities, the Act provides a system to identify and penalize fraudulent behavior. The Indian Contract Act of 1872 demonstrates that in business, a promise is only as strong as the legal equation that supports it.